All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9. As we get this microphone set here, there we go. Sorry for that noise. Um, so welcome back here again, another week here on the full story, another packed week that we had. But you know, it's just funny with the CBS News. We play them at the top and the bottom of the hour, and we don't choose what gets written on there. We just have the news service, and it's always good to have some kind of news service, some national news service. And a good thing for me though is it provides a lot of opportunity for pointing out just how crazy some of their stories are, honestly. And that that one there is talking about tariffs. Um, is They have, first off, the guy they had talking about it. They were talking about how the tariffs is going to hurt, for one, a hockey stick manufacturer. Like, okay, that's we're really going to hurt with that one. But the guy they had do it, he's like one of those like movie guys, and the hockey sticks, they're not going to be in this dire world. You know, this guy that was talking like is the worst thing ever. If you have a voice like that, if you talk like that, you can make anything sound like tense or dire. And 11-year-old Susie got the bike for Christmas. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, come on, man. Like, have a little bit of couth about you, a little bit of thing. It's like this guy talking about hockey sticks and how it's like the worst thing ever. And it's just small stuff like that you lose credibility on. I just, like, when I was hearing that guy talk about it, it's just the most hilarious thing how the hockey sticks and they're going to lose their business, and all because of the tariffs of Donald Trump. It's like, come on, guys, where are we getting here? But And they're not getting any sympathy. And one other group of people that aren't getting any sympathy is federal workers. So one of the things we're going to talk about, obviously, we're continuing on with the shutdown. It is still going. We have not yet hit the first paycheck, which I said is when things really start to hit the fan. Is when the federal workers miss their first paycheck, which will be on the 15th. So next week is when they'll miss their first paycheck. Those furloughed, well, actually all of them. And some recent news in regards to that, as Trump is upping the pressure on these Democrats, as he starts to look to fire the federal workers, which he promised he would do, and which I said is a brilliant idea to do, because let's put the pressure on the Democrats, and this gives us a lot of opportunity to start getting rid of folks who are. We've already trimmed a lot of the fat in the federal government, but there's still more that can be trimmed, and they're giving Donald Trump the golden ticket to do so. Like I said, right now they're they're literally trying to play chicken with Donald Trump on who's going to win this. And what I think they're going to find out is that people just don't have a whole lot of sympathy for federal workers. And because the thing is that we've all had to deal with the federal government, the IRS, or even state workers aren't a part of this, but you've had to deal with government employees. And no offense to the government employees, because there are some good ones out there, right? Don't get me wrong, I've worked with some good government employees, but everybody has in fact had to deal with government employees at least one point in their life, and for a lot of people, it's not a great experience. So when they talk about firing of federal workers, or they're going to be missing a paycheck, people are like, I think they could miss one. I remember it's like, I remember like the person who refused to answer my phone calls, and then looked like they had much more important things to do, like their lunch, before hunting me. So you know what? She probably deserves to miss a few of her paychecks. They've been stealing from the government long enough anyway, in time theft, right? So we're going to talk about what those plans are. Other things are still running, like WIC. A lot of people talked about that. In fact, they just received $300 million to keep running during the government shutdown. So they're not putting pressure on that just yet, on those types of programs. I think WIC is one of those programs. You're not familiar. That's essentially allows mothers to buy food and formula and stuff like that. Basically, there's more to it than that, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. for their babies, and and so it's one of those programs not bad not bad in theory, but usually is abused by certain individuals. But things like that, they are still going. They still are still going forward. Other things that's going on is I want to talk about the Israeli Gaza deal. We spoke a little bit about it last week, or some of the skeleton parts of it. And next, I want to talk about it, how it is actually going on. How what is going on with it, and what's the current what's the current plan. Um, and also in a in a in a in a remarkable kind of an interesting, I guess, turn, not really turn, thing that should have been expected. To use Clay Edwards' famous line, FAFO, Letitia James is now facing criminal charges. She has been indicted by a grand jury. We're going to talk about that. And as they start pointing to saying it's politically motivated, I would say, yep, I agree. It's politically motivated, just like yours was. What goes around comes around. Of course, it's politically motivated. What did you think was going to happen, idiot? But we're going to talk about the actual facts of the case, because she's not in a good spot. It's that's not in a good place that she's at, and she's kind of opened herself to it, which is why I say, if you're going to go after someone politically, you better have a clean slate, because you don't, they're going to find it, and if they ever come in power, they're going to come after you, and that's what happens. So we're going to talk about exactly what is going on with that as well. At the top of the hour, we will have Joe to come back on, of course, as the baseball season is getting, or the baseball playoffs, I should say, um, is getting more exciting, or getting tighter. So there's a lot of things he's going to talk about, as well as he always has a great um, topic to discuss as well. We are, of course, not only here on WYB, we're streaming live on YouTube and Rumble. You can find those links at regulatorsproductions.com. Just Google Regulators Productions. We're the first one up there. You have the links for that. You can also find us at the Full Story FM on either one of those channels, and you can see the beautiful radio face going to you live. So pretty packed show if we get here to these next 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes, I guess, at this point. If you want to call in during the break or anytime in the show, you can call in at 601-879-0002. Always love discussing with you guys, both on and off the air. Like I said, when we talk off the air, it's always great to, if you really have an opinion that you think is not FCC regulated, you can give it to me there. Because I have to dump you if you want to use non FCC language, right? George Carlin, what is it, the five bad words or whatever he said on here, and I get it, right? A lot of people are angry, a lot of things happen, but that's what we can do. We can take it off the air, and we can have a great, frank discussion there. But I always love hearing from you guys in other ways too, is including stories I should look at, or ideas or thoughts that you have that maybe I can help you out with, as far as clarity, or trying to look through a lot of the mess that is out there, because there's a lot of false information. Just the nature of where we are. There's no news agency that you can trust these days. So always question. And like I said, if something I report that you want to question, please do. I would love to hear it. And you can definitely question my research and what I have as well. And we'll see if you are correct. So again, that number is 601-879-0002. We're going to go ahead and take our first break. When we get back, we're going to get into the firing of federal workers as we continue on with the government shutdown. So keep it tuned here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYB 103.9 as we get to our first story of the morning. And that is the Trump starting to fire thousands of federal workers in response to the government shutdown. So, the White House Budget Office said yesterday that mass firings of federal workers have started. With Donald Trump, of course, trying to put pressure on Democratic lawmakers as the government dragged on now into its 10th day. Russ Voigt, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, said on the social media site X that RIFs have begun, referring to reduction in force plans aimed at reducing the size of the federal government. In a court filing, the budget office said well over 4,000 employees would be fired, though it noted that the funding situation was fluid and rapidly evolving. The firings have hit the hardest at the Departments of Treasury, which is the IRS. They're one of the people in there, which would lose over 1,400 employees, and Health and Human Services with a loss of over 1,100. The Education Department and Housing and Urban Development, HUD, would each lose 400 people. And the Departments of Commerce, Energy and Homeland Security, and the Environmental Protection Agency were all set to fire hundreds of more employees, although it was not clear which particular programs, if any, would be affected. So typically, federal workers are furloughed but restored to the jobs once the shutdown ends, traditionally with back pay. However, that is also going to soon be challenged, and I think it should. As some 750,000 employees are furloughed. The only people I think should get back pay are those who've had to work during the shutdown. Why should we give you back pay if you didn't work to begin with? And like I said, call your. I get it, like you're supposed to be hired, but I feel for you, not really, but call your congressman is all I gotta say. But you know what? This happens all the time this happens quite often in the private environment, especially in productions and in companies that produce vehicles, produce parts, what have you. Is that, hey, sometimes they'll shut the line down for 2 weeks. I got too much inventory, and guess what? They don't get paid. So welcome to the real world is all I got to say. And that's one thing, I think why a lot of people don't have a whole lot of sympathy for federal workers is because they have no sense of the real world, where are the struggles that other people have to deal with. And so, you know what? Now's maybe time for them to taste it just a little bit. But right now there is no talks, or pretty much talks are non-existent in regards to coming to some kind of deal to fund the government. And the Trump said in the Oval Office on Friday night that many people will be losing their jobs and that the firings would be focused on Democrat-oriented areas. Again, he's not hiding it, right? He's not saying, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. He's not trying to try to play sly or try to play politician. He's like, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And this is whose fault it is. So ball's in your court, friend. I mean, he's not messing around. Once you shoot at a guy, he has nothing to hide. He's on his second term, right? He's going 120%, and he's not here to hide his objectives from it. He's telling you why it is, and now it's up to you to try to fix it if you want to, or if you don't want to play ball with us, then I'm just going to continue. And I'm going to target Democrat areas. Live with it, And he said it'll be a lot, and we'll announce the numbers over the next couple of days, but it'll be a lot of people. Trump said that going forward, quote, we're going to make a determination. Do we want a lot? And I must tell you, a lot of them happen to be Democrat oriented. These are people that the Democrats wanted that in many cases were not appropriate. Many of them will be fired, is what he said. So we'll see exactly where they're doing it. Schumer, of course, Democrats are going to try to put off the blame on the Republicans. And this is what I find funny. This is Schumer's statement here. He says, let's be blunt. Nobody's forcing Trump and Voigt to do this. They don't have to do it. They want to. They're callously choosing to hurt people, the workers who protect our country, inspect our food, respond when disaster strikes. This is deliberate chaos. Well, there is someone forcing Trump to do it, and it's you. Again, it's not like, going back to the actual budget thing, it's not like the Republicans are asking for a bunch of stuff to be added. They're asking for nothing to be added. They're asking for everything to go as the status quo. But the problem is the Democrats don't want that. They want everything that was in the big, beautiful bill stripped of it. We've talked about exactly what their demands are. Essentially everything in the big, beautiful bill, and they want the Obamacare subsidies to continue. There's really their two big sticking points. And, you know, they just passed the big, beautiful. That's not happening. It's a non-starter. It's not like the Trump is trying to. It's not like he's trying to, or the Republicans are trying to add a bunch of stuff, throw in some pork barrel, throw in their own things into the bill. No, they just want a clean continuing resolution, a clean CR. It's the Democrats that want to color it, they want to flavor it, and because of that, it's a non-go. And so the notice of these firings has already begun at several of the federal agencies. So the White House had previewed its tactics. Shortly begun the shutdown began on October 1st, telling all federal agencies to submit their reduction in force plans to the budget office for its review. So eventually telling all the department heads, say, tell me who you can fire. Tell me who you really don't need. Tell me that person who takes a little bit too long of a lunch break, or the person who comes in late every day and leaves early every day. Tell me about that person. Tell me the person who's only been here just taking a paycheck and just kind of been a slob. Give me that person and tell us who you want to tell us who your favorite children are and who your children are that, you know what, I can deal without them. That's essentially what they are asking. So on Friday, the education department was among the agencies hit by the new layoffs, according to a department spokesperson. A labor union for the agency's workers said the administration is laying off almost all employees below the director level at the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, while fewer than 10 employees are being terminated at the agency's Office of Communications and Outreach. Of course, Donald Trump has directly said that he wants to be gone of the Department of Education. So is it really that surprising that they are doing that? Notice of firings have also taken place at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is part of the nation's cyber and physical infrastructure, according to DHS, where the CISA, that's what I just talking about, is housed. That agency has been a frequent Trump target over its work to counter to talk about the 2020 presidential election and the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of the falsities that they put out. So, of course, they're going to be right in his target as well. So this is just part of the federal cuts. Of course, there are going to be threats of more cuts across the federal workforce. So an official for the American Federation of Government Employees, which is a government union and is suing the Trump administration over the firings, said in a legal filing on Friday that the Treasury Department is set to lay off notices to 1,300 employees. So we'll see if this starts putting pressure on them. But right now, there's almost zero hope for any kind of end to the shutdown at the moment. As on Friday, the Democrats refused to budge in a Senate vote after or kind of simultaneously with the Trump firings. So they're gonna try to remain right there on task. Like I said, things are going to change, I think, around day 14. Once day 14 hits, or not day 14 of the shutdown, well, technically I can't remember what the technical day is, but on the 14th or 15th, right? Right when those federal paychecks start coming down. So it's just more shutdowns after shutdowns. And the lines are being drawn. So the same three members of the Democratic caucus, Senators Catherine Cortez Masto, John Fetterman, and Angus King, who voted for the funding bill, did so again. And Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky is once again the only Republican opposed. So it's pretty much nothing has changed whatsoever. So we'll see. We'll see if this how much pressure that they can put. But again, they're giving Donald Trump the opportunity of a lifetime here to essentially start what he wants. And I think, again, I've talked about the history of federal shutdowns and who can get paid, and how this idea of no one can get paid or everything has to be shut down only dates back to 1980 under the Carter administration. But I think Pam Bondi can do a new attorney general opinion that says things that go towards American safety and security, those employees can be paid. Because it's like this, right? Money is still coming in to the federal government, right? When you take out your paycheck, they're not going to stop taking out the federal income tax, right? That is still coming out. So money is still going into your withholding tax. Money is still going into the federal coffers. That hasn't stopped. Okay. Plus the tariffs and everything else. So the federal government is still getting money. So essentially, the government doesn't have to shut down, quote unquote, according to the Constitution. Again, this only goes back to an attorney general opinion. So that means the current attorney general can put a new opinion. And this is why I said the new opinion should cover military, should cover ICE, should cover border patrol, those types of things that goes to safety. That these individuals, people who are working in those departments, the Department of War, Department of Homeland Security, those kind of departments, they are able to get paid while the shutdown is happening. No other federal employees, right? Nobody in the Department of Education, nobody in the Department of Treasury, they don't get paid, and the furloughed employees don't get back pay. But the people who are actually have to work or who are working, who we deem necessary, right? That's the necessary employee, right? That one of the opinions of that those employees can get paid, right? And then essentially go to the department and say, hey, who is actually necessary here? Or whole departments even necessary? Because again, is this thing's been shut down now for 2 weeks? Not quite 2 weeks, but close to 2 weeks. How much is it affecting day-to-day lives? Not a lot, right? So think about what employees are necessary, pay them, and don't pay the others. And we can go on this thing for a long time at that point, right? So make sure our justice courts are still moving, our criminal courts are still moving, all of those things are still going on. Pay them with the tax money we're getting and the tax money or the money that we have in the coffers right now. And they just operate on last year's budget, essentially. Whatever budget there was last year, that's the one they still operate on. And they just utilize the money that's coming in. And then I think that goes to the executive. This is where executive power can probably be expanded, where they say, hey, it's up to the president now to decide where that money can be appropriated. Until Congress does their job, the country can't stop running because Congress refuses to do their job. So the president, until they do, can appropriate funds as he deems fit. I think that can be an opinion by the attorney general. So essentially, he can just not fund certain agencies and just lay off all their employees or furlough all their employees. And hey, I'd say like this: we're going to furlough you, and you're not getting back pay. This could go on for months. If I was you, I would think about getting another job, right? And that way, you just have a bunch of people quit. You don't have to worry about that either. So it's kind of interesting. You say, look, while you're furloughed, you can't work for someone else. But if you really need the money, you can always quit and go work for someone else. I'm just saying, because we have way too many employees in the federal government. It's just crazy to think about, like I said, over 700,000. And that's just the ones that are, furloughed, right? That's not including all of them. I mean, that is a gigantic machine that maybe needs to be pared down. And this is an opportunity. Like I said, DOGE started a little bit of it, but now we can pare it down just a little bit more. And I think this shutdown can give the president essentially expansive powers, where he has a choice to what to do with the money since Congress is not acting. And what that can do in the future is put that pressure on Congress to pass a bill. Otherwise, the president will do what he wants. I guess you could argue that the party in power can then make sure no bills ever pass. So the president just gets what he wants because he has to be 60 votes, right, to get past the Senate. So the party in power could essentially shut down any vote. So the president could always do it. So that could be an issue. This is the kind of things you have to think when you think about expanding powers. You always have to imagine yourself in the minority, right? As the party that's not in power, right? So then if you imagine yourself in that position, then you decide how you want to do it. So I think you can limit it, right, with the president, which is essentially limiting him to limiting him to uh, only necessary employees, determine what those are, and he can fund those, right? No new programs, stuff like that. The president can't, choose his own personal pet projects to put money towards, or to one of his senator friends. Like, he can't do that, right? Nothing new can happen. It can just fund things at the previous budget, and especially for things that have to do with national security, safety, those kind of things, funding FEMA when necessary. So those kind of exceptions, I think the president should have the authority to make, while Congress works out whatever deal they're going to work out or not work out. And this is going to put pressure on the Democrats and any minority party for that matter to not just hold out, because they know, hey, if I continuously hold out, then that's just going to give more that's just going to give more power to the president and the other party. So, and in years when there's a different parties, right? There's a majority of Democrats in the Senate and a Republican president, or vice versa. That gives a whole lot of incentive for the party in power there to work with them to come to a budget to make sure the president doesn't have expansive powers. So I think that's something that they need to look at. And if there's any president and administration that is willing to do that, to look at that, it's Donald Trump. We've seen them, give out these executive opinions. We've seen them change the thought process on a lot of this stuff. And I think it's a perfect time to do that. All right, we have to take another break right here. When we get back, we're going to discuss what is going on in Gaza, the Gaza-Israeli conflict, and how that is shaping up right now. And then again, if you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. But keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. You're on the full story.
How you doing today, man?
Good. About yourself?
Oh, man, I'm blessed. Hey, do you see where Joe Biden's saying that he deserved the Peace Prize?
Oh, yeah.
Nobel Peace Prize.
I mean,
they're losing.
I mean, that guy, we know that guy hasn't been straight in the head anyway. So, I mean, it's like him and Kamala Harris. Like, I don't even pay attention to them. Like, she's saying some crazy crap too on her book tour, that she's been having. And so it's like, you know what? Those people are over with. I'm not even going to waste the seconds of my day to those people anymore.
Well, I hope they start going after them, like the potato woman.
Oh, yeah.
In California. The potato on her hood or whatever. And that's doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
Well, I heard they're going after Jasmine Crockett too.
Yeah, well, that's one thing we're going to talk about probably the second hour is the Letitia James ones, because man, I just love seeing it. Right, it makes me feel good when it's like it warms my heart.
Right, I'll let you talk about it already. I was sitting there been watching them, and where she's sitting there about to squall. CNN is even going back against her now.
Oh yeah,
pulling up these reels like the California woman. They pull up their look.
Yeah.
You campaign on taking Trump down.
Yep, that's what.
Now you're going to come back saying he's using it. The bullshit.
Yeah,
that's enough. We've had enough of it.
Well, I said, Corey, yeah, it's political. You're the one who started it. You opened that book, friend. Like now you reap what you sow.
Exactly. And I hope they do something, but I hope it just don't get drug out like we've always seen it happening. I mean, just like with the National Guards. Now I got into it with a libertarian yesterday, and he's talking about Trump is the Antichrist, and he's trying to flood the military, take military control. And I want to tell him, man, bullshit, but he's a superintendent on the job and he could run me off. I was on state property, so I had to bite my tongue.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of action to try to get this ship right. It's going to take this extreme action. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, right? Like you said, it's just going to get wasted. People are going to wait. It's not going to happen. No, it's going to take actual action and sometimes drastic action to right this ship.
Well, that's what's going on in Portland. They've gotten away with it for so long. When they occupied the 1% at that time, took over the park, and they've gone up there and they've done nothing to them. Now that Daddy's in the house, and it's time for it to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm scared. I'm just hoping no killings start going on. I'm hoping our men are, responsible enough and can keep their cool and just do their job and not. I've seen them getting spit on and stuff, and that would piss me off too. And I want to break somebody's neck.
Well, people, these guys, they're trained. They're actually, I think people sometimes don't give these guys enough credit than they do. They think, oh, they're just a bunch of backwoods, guys. They're out there. They know how to follow orders, right?
My son's a military police, and he's in Alaska, and I hope that me staying on him like I did coming up, because he's got a temper. But I always pushed him to, if you learn to control your temper, you'll be amazed at what you can do. You think before you react.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, well, I'm going to let you go, man. We're about to be back on the air.
All right, brother. Good hearing you.
Yeah, have a good one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the Full Story on WYAB 103.9. As I want to get into a story that we've been covering, I guess, for a couple years at this point. Well, not a couple years. I haven't been here a couple years, but pretty much since I've been back, I should say. It was, of course, the Israeli-Hamas conflict. As I talked about last week, Donald Trump and his State Department got together in Egypt. They worked out a ceasefire between the parties, which is a promise that Donald Trump said that he would do. And now that ceasefire is apparently holding, as tens of thousands of Palestinians have returned to their Gaza neighborhoods today, weaving through the battle-ridden area, which of course is their fault. Mahmoud al-Shindadi said as he walked through Gaza City, Gaza is completely destroyed. I have no idea where we should live or where to go. Well, again, maybe you shouldn't have put Hamas in power to begin with. About 200 U.S. troops also arrived in Israel to monitor the ceasefire with Hamas. They will set up a center to facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid, as well as logistical and security assistance. The head of the U.S. Military Central Command said he visited Gaza on Saturday to prepare for it. This is Admiral Brad Cooper. He said, this great effort will be achieved with no U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza. So again, they will remain in Israel just to oversee things. Again, 200 is not a whole lot to begin with, but they're just sitting there to monitor everything. An Egyptian official said U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff met with senior U.S. and Israeli military officials in Gaza today, and that Witkoff stressed the implementation of the ceasefire deal's first phase. And so they are, like I said, starting to open up the streets back to the Palestinians as Israel braces for the hostages' return. That's part of the biggest part of this ceasefire. Israel's military has said the 48 hostages still in Gaza would be freed on Monday. The government believes around 20 still remain alive. They're among about 250 hostages taken, of course, back in the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. Israel is to free some 250 Palestinians serving prison sentences, as well as around 1,700 people seized from Gaza the past 2 years, pretty much like prisoners of war, which again is not bad. the Israelis get 20 alive people, and they get 1,900, almost 2,000, and Israel's kicking their butt. So they better honor this ceasefire. Is all I got to say. The Israel Prison Service said today that prisoners have been transferred to deportation facilities at the Ofer and Katziat prisons, awaiting instructions from the political echelons. Now, questions do remain on who will govern Gaza after Israeli troops gradually pull out, and whether Hamas will actually retreat. I read this article from BBC now that says Hamas has actually recalled 7,000 members of its security forces to reassert control over areas of Gaza recently vacated by Israeli troops, according to local sources. The Palestinian group also appointed 5 new governors, all with military backgrounds, some of whom previously commanded brigades in its armed wing. The mobilization order was reportedly issued via phone calls and text messages, which said the aim was to, quote, cleanse Gaza of outlaws and collaborators with Israel, and told fighters to report within 24 hours. So it looks like this ceasefire may not hold, because to me that is one of the goals of what has to happen here, is that Gaza cannot be controlled by Hamas anymore, and Hamas is already starting to move in. That's the problem with them, right? It's sort of like if you don't absolutely obliterate them, they will eventually multiply. Reporters from Gaza suggest that armed Hamas units have already deployed across several districts, some wearing civilian clothes and other in the blue uniforms of the Gaza police. So that is also called spying. If you're caught in if you're an enemy combatant and you're in a civilian attire, that is both a war crime. But for instance, under our military laws, if you are an enemy combatant, now, of course, they're not our enemy combatants. We're not directly fighting them, so it wouldn't necessarily apply. But I'm just giving you this example of how we treat that, is that is considered spying, and there is a mandatory death sentence. So if you're caught with in civilian clothing as a member of, if you're an enemy combatant. And so they're already, like I said, starting to violate international law. It's not that they followed them to begin with, but just a prime example of this may go on even longer, because it's like, these Palestinians are walking back into Gaza, and they see how war torn their homes are. They've talked about how they've always had trouble getting food, and they need all this aid. But then you're going to allow the same people who opened this up, who started all this, back into power? Like, that is insanity, right? It makes it hard for me to feel bad for you, right? I get it. Your place is war torn and all of that. And I would otherwise feel bad for you if you could at least want to better it. But you would go right back to the people who caused it, who started all of this? Then I have nothing for you. I'm sorry. I have zero sympathy for you whatsoever, because you're insane. At least it doesn't have to be Israel. It can be some kind of other Palestinian group, but not Hamas, right? You're asking for Israel to come back and to completely obliterate it down to rubble until they take out every single member of Hamas. That's what you're asking for, and for them to start prosecuting them. And tensions have already rose sharply and quickly after 2 members of Hamas's elite forces were shot dead by gunmen from the powerful Dungmush clan in Gaza City's Saba neighborhood. Hamas members later surrounded a large area. More than 300 Dungmush gunmen were believed to be holed up. So at least there is one group. I don't know who the Dungmush are, but at least they're fighting them, right? At least they're trying to say, hey, we don't want you here. So maybe there's hope. Who knows? But the absolute thing is that Hamas cannot return. So Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel would resume its offensive if Hamas fails to disarm. If it's achieved the easy way, so be it. If not, it will be achieved the hard way, what Netanyahu said on Friday, pledging that the next stage would bring Hamas's disarmament. The scale of Gaza's destruction will become clear if the truce holds. More than 3 out of every 4 buildings have been destroyed, according to the UN. A February assessment by the European Union and World Bank estimated $49 billion in damage. So, again, I hope they do. I hope with the Palestinians, as they come back into their cities, they see that destruction and say, we can never do this again. Right? Sort of like after World War II, when the Europeans started coming back to their cities and they saw it, it's like, we cannot do this again. Memories are short. Wars will always happen, but they shouldn't be that short, right? They shouldn't be a week short. It shouldn't be, okay, Israel's out, come back in, Hamas, right? Like I can understand like 6 generations from now if they start coming back, but like look at this. Take note of this. Understand that Hamas did this to you, right? They went in and attacked Israel on October 6th. Israel had every right to obliterate every single one of them without mercy. That's just the way it is. That's the way war is. When you attack someone, you open yourself up to that, right? You can't blame foul when you attack and they come at you 10 times harder. That's not how that works. So I hope they do take note of this. I hope they see that they're destroyed buildings, they're destroyed homes, they're destroyed livelihoods, and that they actually learn from it. So we'll see if that actually happens. We can be optimistic. I think once the hostages are returned, we'll see if they're returned on Monday. If they actually are returned on Monday, that's their last thing they had of negotiation. I think they know that, which may make things more difficult. Because if they once they give over the hostages, they have nothing over Israel anymore. So we'll see if they actually plan on going through with that. It'd be interesting to see if that happens. Um, but Donald Trump's initial 20-point plan does call for Israel to maintain an open ended military presence inside Gaza along its border with Israel. So they said an international force composed largely of troops from Arab and Muslim countries would be responsible for security inside Gaza, though that timeline is unclear. The Israeli military said it will continue to operate defensively from the roughly 50% of Gaza it still controls after pulling back to the agreed upon line. So they're not completely removing from Gaza, and they're putting at least a buffer zone in there, right? Almost like a DMZ, but not a DMZ. It's militarized from one side. It's a DMC for the other side. So they're being cautious. I think they know that Hamas can't agree to this. I think they know Hamas is not going to lay to it. The big thing is will the hostages be returned on Monday? All right, we have to take a break right here. We'll get back. We'll have a short time before we get into the top of the hour break. If you want to call in during this break, number 601-879-0002. Keep it tuned to the full story on WIAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the Full Story on WYAB 103.9. We got about a minute and a half. Again, the top of the hour, we're going to have Joe at the top of the hour give us some sports updates as well as a great sports topic. He wants to talk college football, which I know a lot of you like. So we're going to discuss a little bit of that. We're also going to talk about my second favorite person in the world after Gavin Newsom, which is Letitia James, and what is coming towards her. It's great. And I want to talk, just generally about exactly what is going on with that case and how strong it is, and what's going to look like going forward. We're also going to talk about the Nobel Peace Prize because there's some fun things going on with that. We got a call for that already today. So we're going to have a very packed second hour. If you want to call during the break, number 601-879-0002. But we're going to take a break right here, and we'll get back at the top of the hour.
Well, I had just got out from the county prison doing 90 days for non-support. Tried to find me an executive position, but no matter how smooth I talk, they wouldn't listen to the fact that I was a genius. The man said we got all that we can use. Now I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. Well, I shouldn't be sitting in an air-conditioned office in a swivel chair, talking some trash to the secretary, saying, hey now, mama, come on over here. Instead, I'm stuck here, rubbing these fenders with a rag and walking home in soggy old shoes. With them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues.
Baby Pocahontas Jackson.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Allison Keys. Terrible news out of Tennessee after a huge blast destroyed a military explosives plant about an hour from Nashville. People miles away say they felt the explosion. No word yet on a cause. Sheriff Chris Davis.
We've had more than probably 300 people. It's done very delicate, very methodical things inside the scene. And at this time, we have recovered no survivors.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton sat down with CBS's Nora O'Donnell to discuss President Trump's Gaza ceasefire and what needs to happen next.
The stars are aligned in a way that has not been available. And I think the Israeli government, the Netanyahu government, needs to seize this moment and make some of its own reforms. We have to build a new transitional authority for the Palestinians, but the Israeli government also has to make some hard decisions.
Former President Biden has started a new treatment for his prostate cancer involving radiation and hormone therapy. CBS's Michael Wallace explains.
A spokesperson for the former president tells CBS News he is doing well and responding to the treatment, which began a few weeks ago in Philadelphia. Biden was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that had metastasized to his bones in May. Last month, he underwent a skin cancer surgery and sported a large bandage on his forehead. He was also treated for skin cancer 2 years ago while he was in office. He had a small lesion removed from his chest. The former 80.
Hey, man, can you hear me?
Yes. Let me turn the volume up. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. I'm just going to get the camera moved here.
Good, awesome.
There we go. Yeah, we're moving to my new office this week. So sorry, I was kind of out of pocket. Just getting all
No worries.
All the stuff moved. You should come see it. You should come up here. When on a Saturday, go to the office. We get some lunch. You have to be here in the studio.
That'd be fun, especially when we get to November or December. Yeah. Would that be okay?
Yeah. I'm you know where I'm at on Saturday, so
if I can just get through the next month or so, I think I'll have more flexibility to do it.
Yeah, man, it'd be good to see. Also, so you can see the studio here.
That'd be really cool. How
so you
close
got-
is it to your office?
It's about 30 minutes or so from my office. Yeah. So the studio's kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're kind of I mean, it's a radio studio, so we don't have to be in downtown areas.
Yeah.
And, so we're kind of out in the kind of like the country, even though more and more rich people are moving out this way, buying up the land. But it's a good 30 minutes or so from Jackson. It's like, heading towards Yazoo City on 49. So
Okay. Nice.
we're in a city called Flora, Mississippi.
What's the name of it?
Flora, Flora.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, it's a nice little town. I mean, it's like an old town, right? Like, it's got the classic, like, tiny town, like Main Street, so it's got like all the like little town stuff. Its biggest thing that there is the church, so is but like I said, it seemed like it was a lot further years ago, but people start moving out this way, and they start building these huge subdivisions coming out here, so the rich people have caught on.
Nice. It's the word's gotten out.
Exactly. But yeah, so
Sorry, if I looked distracted, I heard some people. I saw like they were shouting outside, like downtown
you at your house,
Hattiesburg.
yeah,
I was at the apartment downtown Hattiesburg,
yeah.
and so I could hear. I don't know if there was a protest going on or something. And I was like, "What is that?"
They don't have ICE people down there yet, though, right? I mean, there's no.
I don't know. Sometimes the downtown on weekends they'll have, I think, gatherings like that, but it sounds like it kind of settled down. Though. I was afraid. For a second, I was afraid it was going to start like while we're on the air.
Yeah, no, you're good. All right, we're gonna break off right here because we're about to get back on the air in just a second.
Sounds good.
It's a bun. It takes it to a whole nother level. It goes perfectly with the chicken and the cheddar cheese and the bacon. Man, you know how much you love bacon. And I love the different varieties. Grilled, spicy, original. It gets you nice and excited for fall.
Order the Pretzel Cheddar Club with Cherry Berry and Sprite for a limited time on the Chick-fil-A app. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
There's nothing like when you get that part from eBay and it just fits. Yeah, the first time. So you can do less of this and get right back to more of this. At eBay, you'll find all the parts you need, guaranteed to fit, at prices you'll love. Sounds good, doesn't it? eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are the individual views and opinions of the people expressing them and do not necessarily reflect those of this radio station, its parent, affiliated, or related entities, agents, or employees.
It's time for The Full Story with your host, Matthew Bishop. Matt's back on the WYAB airwaves. And now, the host of The Full Story, Matthew Bishop.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9 as we get into our second hour. Our first hour was pretty packed as we talked about the government shutdown and importantly about the government shutdown, the firing of thousands of employees as Donald Trump ups the pressure on the Democratic lawmakers, as well as discussing the Gaza ceasefire and how it's kind of holding, but how Hamas is already starting to move in as they've seen people on the ground. I've already seen them dressing in civilian clothing, trying to disguise themselves as Gaza police, all leading up here to the supposed to exchange of hostages. The 40 or 20 or so that are still alive. There's 48 total, but 20 of them are still alive on Monday to see if that actually happens. So we discussed that and kind of the insanity if they allow Hamas to come back into power as they're already looking to go into areas that Israel has vacated. So we'll see how that plans and how it goes on Monday is really going to be the day of that test. So you can find that on our PDF see that on the full story on regulationsproductions.com. Just click on the full story. There it is. You can find all of our old stuff on there where we are live streaming, and you have all the links. But now we're here to the top of the second hour. What we like to do, of course, with the top of the second hour is to check in with Joe to get our sports update for things that we cover here on the air, as well as other happenings. So, Joe, thanks again for being back with us.
Absolutely, Matthew. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Joe, right now, of course, we're getting into the heat of the heat of postseason baseball. Of course, crazy game yesterday with the Mariners going 15 innings.
That's right. That was one of the best postseason games I've ever seen. The longest winner take all game ever as far as going extra innings. I think the previous longest winner take all game was 13 innings. And so you surpassed that. And you had the teams in the late innings have so many opportunities to score and nobody could. And then finally Seattle broke through in the 15th. But just the pitching performances by both teams, just matching each other pitch for pitch, was just remarkable.
Yeah, well, I mean, what made that game really interesting too, because of course you had probably the Cy Young winner Tarek Skubal going against possible MVP candidate and their catcher. So it was a big dumper. I just love his.
Kyle Raleigh.
Yeah, his nickname. So that's what made that game. And you have the MVP going against a Cy Young candidate. That's always a fun game. MVP candidate versus Cy Young candidate going against each other is always a fun matchup. But I was glad to see the Mariners pull out with that. Mariners have been the baseball team that I've seen the most live ever. My very first baseball game was with the Mariners. So I've been to their stadium more than I have any other baseball team. So
really,
so excited to see them. Excited to see maybe them going to the World Series for the first time. Of course, despite all their amazing players they've had over the last, it's kind of crazy thinking how many Ken Griffey Jr. and Ichiro and all these amazing players they've had, but never made it to the World Series. The only team left that's never made it to the World Series. We've had a few that haven't won it, but they're the only one who hasn't made it. So excited to see them in the conference, in the league series, I should say.
That's right. And I think that's just going to be a raucous series with Toronto and Seattle, because those have two of the greatest fan bases and venues as far as how loud they can get and the energy. And so that's going to be just an energetic championship series.
But speaking of that, just one thing is the crazy error from Orion Kirkring, I can never say his name right, the pitcher for the Phillies, missing a throw to the catcher to end the game on an error, and they're in their whole season on an error.
Yeah, that was really tough. I didn't get to see it live. I saw just a part of one of the late innings of that game, and that was a classic game as well. I don't think there was a score until the 6th or 7th inning, and it was 1-1 going into extra innings. And so that was just a clash of titans. And you kind of feel like, whoever's going to win that series is going to win the National League pennant. So just a lot of pressure on the Phillies. And even as a Braves fan, they are, in the division, but I do feel for how that ended.
Yeah, I thought I was watching Pedro Martinez, talk about it afterwards. Of course, Pedro Martinez is one of the best pitchers to ever have lived. But he was trying to say it's like we've all been there. But the thing is like not really. It's only the second time it's happened in all of MLB history. Like you've done something even more rare than any perfect game or anything else, and you killed your season on an error. I know he's going to be hating himself. And that's the worst part, is he's going to be thinking about that literally all off season.
Yeah, I really hate that for him. In the Phillies this year, you really felt like offensively they had just a great season, a great lineup. Their pitching has been really good. They had injuries to a couple of their best starting pitchers, most notably Zach Wheeler. But it looked like this was going to be a prime opportunity for them to make it back to the World Series. And so, like I said, you definitely feel sad for them. But the Dodgers prevail again, the defending champions, and they'll play the winner of Chicago and Milwaukee. And I think tonight Chicago and Milwaukee is going to be a really good Game 5 as well.
Yeah, I know. I know you're not. I know you're not a. I know you're not a Cubs fan, but you have a special place in your heart for the Cubs. I know.
Yeah, we going to Wrigley Field, getting to see the Braves there. It's always been, kind of neat to think about that venue of Wrigley Field. And so obviously the game tonight's in Milwaukee, but those two teams, Milwaukee and Chicago, separated by 90 miles. And
Yeah.
the manager of the Cubs Craig Counsell used to be the manager of the Brewers.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great thing. So of course, now that we're shifting over, now that of course the Braves have been out of it, we cover the LSU Tigers, a team that I'm not a fan of, and I will probably not be listening to their broadcast, but we do actually we do cover their broadcast here. Any crazy games in college football this weekend?
Yes, you've got LSU hosting South Carolina tonight. You've got Alabama and Missouri playing right now. I think the big one, though, later this afternoon after your show will be Texas and Oklahoma as far as some intrigue, because Oklahoma is number 6 in the country, undefeated, expected to get their quarterback back from injury, John Mateer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Texas is basically playing an elimination game with Arch Manning that they really can't afford another loss if they want to stay in the playoff race.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. I mean, people on the show know I'm not a huge college football fan after all the changes. I just haven't been able to enjoy it. But the thing with Arch Manning, though, just you can imagine how much pressure's on the kid with the name and thinking like, you have to perform, because he's only is he a redshirt freshman this year, or is he a sophomore? I don't know.
He's a true junior, but this is his first year as the full-time starter. Like he's just been setting in the wings with all this hype just building.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize he'd been there that long. So I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was kind of how nationalized I think college sports has become, with almost like they travel just as much as NFL teams do at this point.
Yes, that was the topic. Yeah, because I was wondering your thoughts on that with the super conferences. And, right now you've got, even out of conference opponents. Ole Miss is playing Washington State right now. And, the travel distance between Washington and Mississippi. And then I thought about this topic with Oregon playing at Penn State a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And then I think the very next week, Penn State traveled to UCLA. And those are quote unquote conference games. You just think about the travel. I'm curious your thoughts on like how sustainable is that going to be economically? Are people just going to continue to do that, you think?
Well, this goes back, I think, to the overall theme of college football, which is these guys are no longer students. It's essentially a minor league at this point, because traditionally, that's why we had to have you couldn't travel that much, because you know what, you had a game on Saturday, you had to be back in class on Monday, but if you're essentially professional sports players, this is your job, right? I mean, I don't necessarily blame them for that, because if you're getting paid $1 million to play this game, my studies would come second too. I promise you. I'd much rather be studying film than studying, chemistry. Not that any of these guys are studying chemistry, but it's just so I think this just underlines the fact of where that game is going. It's a professional league, right? And so as someone who is familiar with Division I sports and been involved with them, it's even back when I was in college, like they had private jets and everything like that, and that was before anybody got paid, right? So economically, the crazy thing is that's all student, not student, that's all taxpayer money, but it is essentially, they travel better than double A teams, right? Like,
yeah, it's insane. Yeah. I mean, just the luxury there, and just like with how the conferences like the Big Ten and the ACC have become so nationalized. You've got, I mentioned Penn State and Oregon in the same conference. You've got Stanford is in the ACC with Duke and North Carolina. So you got all these cross-country trips. And, the focus, for me is obviously going to be on football with it being in the season right now, that aspect of it. But I just think about how going forward, how does this impact sports like softball and baseball? How sustainable is it when their schedules in conference are lengthier? And so you might have like a 3-game road series. If you're Oregon, your baseball team might play at Rutgers for 3 games. You might have to play at Michigan for 3 games. Might have to play at Penn State. You know what I mean? Like it's just insane.
Well, I think really the sustainability goes to especially the sports that don't get the money, right? The sports that don't get the big fans, like, what, like it or not, agree with or not agree with it, but things like women's soccer, right? Or a lot of the women's sports, a lot of the Title IX sports, that that these teams have is that they have them because they have to legally. And I think they provide great opportunities for a lot of female students, but they don't get the money, they don't get the viewership. So, those athletes have to be able to go back to class because again, that is, that's what always been the great thing about sports in college, that it gave people a way to get to college that otherwise couldn't, right? Or a way to pay for college they otherwise couldn't. So if you're doing that, the sport is secondary to your degree. It's a way to get your degree. So that's the people I think it's not going to harm your big sports. I think again, you're not really concerned about school, not really concerned about any of that. Especially your football and baseball guys, basketball guys, but especially in women's sports, there are a lot of sports that are a lot lesser known, that don't get the viewership. It's going to hurt them, I think, more than any of the big.
Yeah, like maybe like the Olympic sports. And do you think that eventually we're going to see those sports just either dissipate or just not play those conference travel schedules?
They may even have if I was them, maybe schedule neutral sites for especially and we're gonna play 2 games in a weekend, for instance, for like a soccer game, we put them in some kind of a neutral space to get them together, because the cost does start become a thing, right? Because again, they're not making money off these sports. Football is paying for them. Let's be honest. I don't agree with it, and I hate that. Trust me, I hate that more than anybody, but it's the reality. And so it's like I said, I think maybe they have to start looking at, maybe we have a joint series together with a bunch of teams coming in. So like they do in baseball with spring training, let's just come to an area for a few games, or, with a bunch of different teams playing that from each side of the coast to try to maximize our cost and to try to affect the schedules of these players as least as possible.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that. And I just think about, kind of like lastly, I feel like in 5 years, it'll probably just be unrecognizable to what it is now. I sometimes try to imagine, like, what is this going to look like in a few years with how it's going, where it's going. And I feel like it's probably something I can't even foresee, because I would not have foreseen this 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I think when they created these conferences, they created them with things like football and basketball in mind. I think was that they didn't really think about women's sports. They didn't really think about the lesser known sports, because again, those are secondary concerns, and I think these are going to be the issues that start popping up. And they say, hey, they're still in the same conference too. There's not a separate conference for women's soccer, right? Or women's lacrosse, right? There's not a separate conference for that. So we got to play the same opponents. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, Joe. Well, we're going to take another break right here, but Joe, it's always good to have you. When we get back, we're going to get into Letitia James, my favorite person. We're gonna get up with what's the actual fact on that case, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding right there. But Joe, we're going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks for joining us. But we're going to take our next break right here. So keep tuned to the Full Story on WYAB 103.9. as I say, probably my second favorite person in this country, which is Letitia James, after, of course, my good friend Gavin Newsom. So she is, of course, indicted officially this week on federal bank charges and making false claims. She was indicted Thursday by a federal grand jury in Virginia on charges of bank fraud and making false claims to a financial institution that netted her nearly $19,000 in savings on a loan for a second home, according to the Department of Justice. The indictment was handed up in the Eastern District of Virginia, where former FBI Director James Comey was also indicted on September 25th on charges of lying to Congress and obstruction to justice. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan said in a statement, quote, "No one is above the law. The charges as alleged in this case represent intentional criminal acts and tremendous breaches of the public trust. The facts and the law in this case are clear, and we will continue following them to ensure that justice is served." James responded to a statement, quote, "This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system." Sorry. Oh, man. Weaponization of the justice system. It's so funny. I can't get through that with a straight face because of what she did, right? I mean, the fact that she literally ran on getting Donald Trump, that the Donald Trump literally ran on prosecuting him. This is just, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. So anyway, it's hard for me to get through that. That she would say weaponization of the justice system. Anyway, continue on with her statement because I got to get through it. This is nothing more than a continuation of President's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding. Oh my God. It's just like you did the same thing, man. All because I did my job as a New York State Attorney General. The charges are baseless, and the president's own public statement make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from both members of party. So let's talk about that baselessness because I think that's important. So what exactly is she? What exactly is she being charged for? So again, it's pretty much lying on a mortgage document. So I'm going to pull up this mortgage document here on the live stream. You can see it. So I'm going to put that up. And so this is going to be important because we're going to talk through. Because let's look at the actual evidence, right? Let's just take politics out of it for just a second, okay, and discuss what is actually being charged with. So, like I said, she essentially lied on a document saying it was going to be her primary residence. So this involves a home that she bought in Norfolk, Virginia. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. She bought in August of 2020 for roughly $137,000, most of which was financed with a $109,000 loan that prohibited it from being used as a secondary home or investment property or rental property, right? And so, excuse me, I don't know what that happened there. I just get so excited talking about it. My throat can't even hold it. And what that does is that allows her to obtain favorable loan terms not available for rental property. So you get essentially a lower mortgage rate if it's your primary home. That makes sense, right? We want to make sure people who want to buy it to live in have a lower interest rate than people who want to make money off a property. That just makes sense. The 5-page indictment says she gained approximately $18,933 over the life of the loan. And when a Post reporter visited the Norfolk home in April, neighbors said they had never seen James at the property. And meanwhile, her income tax forms designate the home as a rental that brought in thousands of dollars in additional incomes. So again, I have here on the screen here, if you're watching on the live stream, that literally says, and it's in red circled, that I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. And at the top, you see her name, Letitia James, and everything there, clearly her. clearly being signed from her, cut and dry. It's in black and white. That's right there that she tried to essentially get favorable terms. I mean, it's right there in the form. That's easily admissible in trial. It's a business record. No issue whatsoever in coming in. And black and white, that's her stating something that's not true, especially since she's supposed to be the Attorney General of New York, and she's saying a home in Virginia is her primary residence. I mean, red flag there as well, right? That, or she's, committing election fraud in New York, and she's running for New York and she's living in Virginia. Which one is it? You just tell me which crime are you violating? Is it running in for an office that you're not eligible for? So is it election fraud or is it bank fraud? Just let me know. You just tell me. I'm good with either one, Letitia. Right? You tell me which one it is, and I'll be happy. Just clear it up for us. Just clear up for me which crime you're violating. If you just clear that up for me, that'd be great. Right? I mean, there's no right answer to what she done. Norfolk property records reviewed earlier this year showed James granted power of attorney to her niece. This is part of the form, Shamise Thompson Hairston, on August 17th, 2023, authorizing the purchase of the Virginia property, for which they secured a $219,000 mortgage, which is also interesting. We'll get to that in just a second. Because now she's getting stuff for her niece, and there's other property. There's two different properties going on here now. Thursday's indictment puts the timeline of the alleged bank fraud scheme from August of 2020 to January of 2024 for the purposes of influencing action of OVM Financial, a Fannie Mae-backed lender, upon an application for a loan. So essentially, because it's a federally backed loan in the banks, that's what makes it also a federal crime. Oops. You just opened yourself up, friend. The indictment said James represented and affirmed in uniform residential loan applications and related documents that the Perrone property would be used as secondary residence, when in truth and fact, as James then knew, the property was intended and used as an investment property with no intended or actual personal occupancy or use by her. Federal housing regulator Bill Pulte referred James to the Justice Department in April, suggesting that she had committed crimes including wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, and false statements to a financial institution. So when you call it baseless, I wouldn't say it's baseless. I say the evidence right there is it's kind of clear. Again, black and white right there on the form. So, and of course, this is the person who has consistently gone after Trump criminally and civilly. She, of course, won a civil judgment in her state where she brought for allegedly inflating the value of his real estate empire, which again was baseless because people always do certain things to for investment and things like that. And they ordered him to pay $355 million in penalties, but the Trump administration successfully appealed in August to have the fine thrown out. James' office has appealed for reinstatement of the judgment, which had grown to more than $500 million in interest. She said, "I am a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space." Well, faith has nothing to do with you committing felonies, my friend. You can have faith all you want, but I have very much faith that you committed a crime. Now, in a grand scheme of things, is it a huge crime? No, right? Not a huge crime, but it is a crime. And if you are going to prosecute someone, if you are going to go after a former president, future, and if someone who is running for office, you better have your ducks in order, man. Like you better have not even a demerit on your record from elementary school if you're going to do that. But these people are so full of themselves. They're so certain of themselves that they do not think they could ever lose. That's why they lost the last election. And that's why in this country, while we've never prosecuted our political rivals, because they're always going to be back in power themselves. So you're always putting yourself at risk. The only time you can you can prosecute someone for political purposes is if you are certain, 120% certain, that you will never lose, that you will always remain in power. That's where they got it wrong. They forgot that this is still America. As much as they hate America, it is in fact still America. And so they put all their eggs in one basket, tried to take down Donald Trump down as much as they could, try to prosecute him, and then they tried to kill him. But no matter what, none of it stopped him, and now he's coming back. So yeah, is Donald Trump's prosecution of her politically based? Absolutely. Sure. And I'm sure he'd probably say absolutely it is too, because she opened that door. The problem is that politically based or not, or politically motivated or not, the black and white facts of the case is still a crime, and that's on her. You opened yourself up to your political rivals. You gave them the ammo they needed. It's like you loaded the gun and handed it to them. And that's just real easy, because these kind of cases, again, it's black and white. Now she can say what she has, oh, I did it by mistake twice on multiple documents. It's just crazy. And the fact that you're saying in other documents that it was an investment property in her financial disclosure forms. So, as public officials have to financially disclose what they own to make sure there's no conflicts of interest, never really works, but they got to do it anyway. It's at least a formality. And in that document, she listed that Norfolk home, that same 3-bedroom Norfolk home, as an investment property, despite getting a mortgage as a primary residence. So she is actively admitting in other documents of what it is. So it's listed in the real estate section of her 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 disclosures to the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government as an investment valued at between $100,000 to under $150,000. But then, interesting enough, and this is where the criminal element starts coming in, right? You guys know I was a prosecutor for 7.5 years. And where you see, when people know they've done wrong, is when they try to clean up their act, when they try to hide their crime. That is one of the key aspects of indications of guilt, of indications of wrongdoing, because innocent people who've done things by mistake, they don't know to clean up their criminal acts. They didn't know they did it, or they did it by accident or something, right? Or they come clean about it, but they try to hide it and they try to clean it up. That's when there's a red flag, because in her 2024 ethics filing, right, James designated the Norfolk home as real property rather than an investment. 2024, right when she knows that Donald Trump is going to be looking at her. He's looking to get into office. The AG also upped the estimated value of the single-family home to $150,000 to under $250,000, because we talked about she got a mortgage of it for $202,000. Now, that 2024 disclosure was filed in May of this year, a month after the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, Director William Pulte sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department alleging that James had falsified records to obtain home loans for a different Norfolk, Virginia property. So essentially, after that happened, she started filing disclosures. That's when she started trying to cover her tracks. And that is a great indication of guilt. And because, again, that's not why she got it. If she changed it from an investment to real property, she could argue, look, I disclosed it, it's real property. It's like, we can see the date, man. Like, do you think people are stupid? And again, she was indicted by a grand jury. That's the other thing I need to make sure that's clear here, is that the way our system works, it's a brilliant system, right? Is that the Constitution guarantees that you have a right to a grand jury. No government official can charge you with a crime, right? Or return an indictment. They can charge you. They can't return an indictment, but colloquially charge, right? So as much as Donald Trump would want to, he can't say, he can't send her to court. He can't indict her. That has to be a federal grand jury. That's what happened. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't Pam Bondi. It wasn't the Attorney General in Virginia. It was a grand jury. Now, they put it to the grand jury, and they presented their evidence, and the grand jury found probable cause. Why did they find probable cause? Because of that document I just showed you which showed black and white that she had violated the law. She had committed bank fraud. Is it a lot of bank fraud? No, it is not. It's a low amount of bank fraud. But you know what? Even a low amount of bank fraud, you know what it still is? Bank fraud. And that is still, whether she agrees with it or not, a crime. And it's a crime that you can be indicted for, and it's a felony. So you open yourself up to that. You knew you were doing this illegal crap, but they thought that they could just get away. They thought they could prosecute Donald Trump and nothing would happen to them. Donald Trump and his team are looking at all of these people. They're looking at every single thing in their history, every single document they have ever filed to find this stuff because they opened themselves up to it. They made themselves a target and they have what's coming to them because that's why you don't do this in this country. That's why you don't try to politicize our government system, weaponize it, as she said, because exactly what they did, because it can be weaponized right back against you. And it's a beautiful day in America because what comes around comes around. What goes around comes around. Now what comes around comes around. That doesn't make any sense. That's like a boomerang, I guess. What goes around comes around. And she is seeing the full force of that right now. Okay, so we'll see how this plays out. And what's going to happen, but she's going to have to go get her mugshot. She's going to have to go down there to go to trial. All that stuff has to happen, and it's going to be a beautiful day to see her mugshot, her big mug face on that mugshot. And I hope that they publish it everywhere, just like they wanted to publish Donald Trump's. Remember they had to try to embarrass Donald Trump with all that stuff? Oh man, what revenge is best served cold, right? Man, it's just a sweet feeling. And I think it couldn't happen to a better group of people. Okay, we're going to take another break right here. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. Keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, legend, and welcome back here to the full story. We don't have too much time. I spent a lot of time there on Letitia James, but I just, I just wanted to really break it down. They can say it's political. They want. I don't doubt it's political, but facts are facts at the end of the day, right? You either commit a crime or you don't. You take politics out of it, no matter how big or small the crime is, it's still a felony. It's still bank fraud, and that is the facts, right? And it's not like they are violating the she says they're violating the Constitution. No. Constitution allows you a fair trial. The Constitution allows you to be indicted by a grand jury, which they followed. You still have all your constitutional rights, and it's going to go through the trial process. The Constitution, in fact, is completely being followed. And she'll have her time to try to plead her innocence, but like everybody else, it's going to be in court, and you're going to have to face it because of the actions that you committed. The next thing I want to talk about is, with a couple of minutes here, is the Nobel Peace Prize. So liberal media was all up in there about, oh, Donald Trump's so mad he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. He wanted it so bad. He's trying to force them to do it. Well, first off, I couldn't care less about the Nobel Peace Prize. They remember if he gave it to Obama for what he was going to do, and mind the fact that Ronald Reagan, who literally stopped the Cold War, didn't get a Nobel Peace Prize. That should tell you all you need to know. But the lady who did get it was probably very deserving, and she actually dedicated her award to Donald Trump, which I think is very, very interesting and very cool. So her name is Maria Corina Machado. She's a Venezuelan person, a Venezuelan lady who has been trying to fight the Maduro organization down there in Venezuela, the narco trafficking and the drug trafficking. And so her interests align a lot with Donald Trump. And she actually dedicated the award yesterday to both President Donald Trump and the suffering people of Venezuela. Machado is a leading figure in the resistance against Venezuela's ruling party. Wow, that was a lot of stuff going on there. To acknowledge the honor and praise Trump for his support. She said, "The recognition of the struggle of all Venezuelans is a boost to conclude our task to conquer freedom. We are on the threshold of victory, and today, more than ever, we count on President Trump, the people of the United States, the peoples of Latin America, and the democratic nations of the world as our principal allies to achieve freedom and democracy." She added, "I dedicate this prize to the suffering of Venezuela and to President Trump for his decisive support of our cause." Machado has previously been outspoken in his support for the Trump administration's actions against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's regime and the country's narco-trafficking network. Last month, following reports that a U.S. strike killed 11 alleged Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists transporting drugs from Venezuela, Machado said appeared to talk about Maduro's leadership, saying it was time for him to go. And Donald Trump, of course, has been very active in taking out these narcotics traffickers, sending now our military to actively bomb them, which I still think is a beautiful thing. International waters, give our guys target practice. It just warms my heart to see them actually taking those actions against these narco terrorists. She said, "On behalf of the Venezuelan people, I want to tell you how grateful we are to President Trump and the administration for addressing the tragedy that Venezuela is going through. Maduro has turned Venezuela into the biggest threat to the national security of the U.S. and the stability of the region." Trump, of course, has been a vocal critic of Maduro, and the U.S. is among several countries that do not recognize Maduro's government as legitimate. In last year's election, Machado rallied millions of Venezuelans to reject Maduro, and she was described as brave and a committed champion of peace by Jorgen Wath-Fridnes, what a name there, chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee. He said she is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. And Trump, of course, was grateful for her support of him and dedicating it to him. And it just goes to show that even though Donald Trump didn't win the Nobel Prize, his actions cause others to win it. His actions cause betterment in this world. Whether the Democrats like it or not, the liberals believe it or not, that is a fact coming straight from someone who has to deal with it herself. All right, we have to take a break right here. When we get back, we'll do This Day in History. Keep it tuned to the Full Story on WYAB 103.9. All right, legend, and welcome back here to the Full Story on WYB 103.9 as we get to this day in history. So on this day, October 11th, 1975, American television was changed forever with the debut of the new late-night comedy show on NBC, Saturday Night Live. Created by Lorne Michaels and developed with NBC executive Dick Ebersol, the show was designed to fill the Saturday 11:30 p.m. time slot left open after The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, stopped airing weekend reruns. The very first episode was hosted by George Carlin, a great dialogue, a great monologue, if you ever have a chance to see that on YouTube, who is one of the era's most boundary-pushing comedians. Instead of performing in sketches, Carlin just delivered several of his classic stand-up routines. The original cast, later dubbed the Not Ready for Primetime Players, including people such as Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, and Gilda Radner, several of, as well as Jane Curtin as well, by the way. So a lot of big-name people ended up having very, very successful careers. The first night also featured live music from Billy Preston and Janice Ian, and a now legendary Jim Henson Muppets segment, though darker and stranger than the later family-friendly work. So, of course, it has gotten much worse since then. It hasn't really gotten back from those very original players, so they've lost sight of what they used to be for, but it still nonetheless started on this day back in 1975. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. We'll see you again next week, but until then, my name is Matthew Bishop, and you have heard the full story.
Bye, 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 baby, bye-bye. I may be seeing you all around. Will I change my living standard and move on?